So there were a ton of things that were announced today at WWDC 2023, and I am excited about a lot of them. There are 10 in particular that I'm really excited for, so I want to share those with you today. And to keep it short, I am not going to talk about any new products that were announced today. But otherwise, let's talk tech. I'm Agent with Ardently Tech. We believe tech was made to make our lives easier, so we're here to help you understand and discover new tech that improves your life. So let's start with iOS. iOS 17 has been flooded with a bunch of new features that they just kind of ran through them. You have new stickers, new contact posters. You also have live voice memo, which is a transcription of what's being recorded as the voice memo is being recorded. There's a new check-in functionality that you can do with your friends who are leaving and you want to make sure that they get home safely. There's also a bunch of new updates when it comes to Messages app and like autocorrect and all these things, but those aren't what I want to focus on. But the things I really want to focus on is stuff like the voice memo transcription. This is something that Google actually announced for their Google Pixel 7 back in October of 2022. And now Apple has announced that they're going to be doing this, not so subtly I might add, because they sound like their script was almost so similar to Google's, which is really funny. I do remember watching the Google Pixel event and being really excited about this feature, so I'm really glad that Apple has included this into the new iOS 17. I also love the new AirDrop stuff. So there's the name drop and then the ability to continue sending an AirDrop if it's like a larger AirDrop without having to be connected close to the phone. And like if you send a larger video and you're trying to AirDrop it, sometimes you have to stay there until it actually finishes sending. But now you can go away, you can start the process and then just leave and it'll continue doing it through the internet, which I think should have been the way it's always been. And I'm glad it's finally being fixed. With name drop, all you gotta do is kind of similar to your tap to pay. You just bring it up to another phone, share your contact by getting your phone closer to another phone, and it's really cool. Another new feature I'm really excited for in iOS 17 is that new standby functionality when your phone is docked and charging. Having these nice clear to see widgets while your phone is charging in landscape mode makes it really cool. And as a basketball fan and a sports fan, I can't wait to see the live scoreboard just be on my phone as it's docked. That's gonna be really cool. That said, I would love to see this functionality with iPads, because that would be a really nice way to see your iPad while it's just either charging or just on a stand or just standing, on your desk, whatever. It would be really cool to see that on iPadOS. And another thing I think is really cool is the new FaceTime voicemail. Something that apparently a lot of people have asked for. I never thought of doing that, but it makes so much sense and I'm really excited to try that out and send a bunch of FaceTime voice memos. As someone who lives far away from family, I typically try to FaceTime friends and family when I'm trying to get a hold of them instead of taking a phone call. But moving on to iPadOS, a lot of those features are also available onto the iPadOS as always, but there are some that are exclusive and new to the iPad, like customizable wallpapers. That's something that we had in iOS 16, but we didn't have in iPadOS 16 for some reason, and I don't know why. So now that we have that on iPadOS, I'm really excited to be able to customize my lock screen and have widgets and all that stuff on there. And speaking of widgets, you can now also have interactive widgets within your home screen. And that's something that didn't make sense to me when they added widgets, because yeah, it's cool to see them, but then you would have to, like for checklists in particular, you would have to press it and it would open up the reminders app or whatever checklist it is, and then you would have to check it off there. And it didn't make sense to me, so I'm just glad now that it's pretty much fixed with these new interactive widgets. And a few new features on iPadOS that I'm not gonna harp too much on is the fact that it has a new health app. Well, it's the health app, but now it's available on iPadOS. There'll be live activities, just like we were talking about with the scoreboards and things like that, checking your progress on your Uber Eats, whatever it is. But you also now get this PDF autofill and a few other PDF functionalities, which is pretty cool. Moving on to macOS, another really cool feature that I'm excited for, and again, we kind of talked about this in the iPadOS, is the widgets that are now available on your home screen or your desktop view. Widgets in particular are not new to macOS by any means, but they always were tucked away in a sidebar that you can pull up whenever you needed it. Now you can just put it right on your desktop and they will hover, and you can put them wherever you want them, however you want them to organize them. And I think that's something, again, a little late to the party, but I'm glad it's finally happening. The other stuff on macOS wasn't too flashy. There was some cool things like presenter overlay, which is pretty cool, but that's really for people who do a lot of Zoom calls and stuff like that for work. There's some new game mode that you can do. I didn't really pay attention to that part. I don't game on my MacBook Pro. I never have, I never will. And one cool thing that I won't harp too much on is the Safari profiles, which is cool because as someone who likes to have a lot of tabs open on particular different subjects or whatever, having those profiles to separate those tab groups, it's gonna be really great. And there's also that shared password thing, which you can share with your family and friends and stuff like that. Cool. I don't need to use it that much. Moving on to home and audio, which I'm just gonna really focus on the AirPod Pro updates, which I feel like this is the first ever I've seen actual AirPod Pro updates that didn't come with a new model, or I was just really surprised to see a software update for the AirPod Pros, and I'm really excited for it. That new adaptive audio sounds really interesting to me. Being able to blend the transparency and active noise cancellation functionalities into one to make it a better and more adaptive experience is gonna be really interesting to try out. Adaptive transparency, really cool because it actually does lower those louder volumes and amplifies the ones you need to hear, it feels like. So I can imagine that this new adaptive audio is gonna be even better and a step forward to that. So I'm really looking forward to it. They also briefly announced that you can now mute your mic while you're in a loud environment by just squeezing. Pretty cool. And they're gonna also improve the switching between your Apple products and for your AirPods, which I think the really only place that needs to be improved is from like your MacBook to your iPhone, or maybe your Apple TV to your iPhone. Speaking of Apple TV, tvOS is going to have FaceTime capabilities, which is really cool. I was like, how is that going to work? But it makes sense. Like using a camera on your iPad or your iPhone, I think maybe even your MacBook, you're able to do so. Use that camera, see the people you're talking to on your TV is going to be really cool. As someone who has an Apple TV, the Apple TV is really good. Being able to connect your AirPods and all that stuff is awesome, and now having this functionality with FaceTime is gonna take it to the next step because you can also do share play during those FaceTime calls, and that's taking it to another level. And the last thing I'll mention is the watchOS, having the new smart stacks and a whole completely kind of new redesign for the Apple Watch. Really exciting, feels like it's a much needed redesign. Well, it's not too different, but it's still very familiar, but it's different enough for you to feel refreshed for your new Apple Watches. There's a few other things that they do. You can also do name drop on your Apple Watch to an iPhone, and there's a few other stuff like the topographical maps, dynamic 3D elevation, mental health features, group FaceTime audio, which I don't like to take FaceTime audio calls on my watch because it's like a yelling match and trying to hear and do a lot. Maybe the newer Apple Watches are better, but my SC first generation, it's not the greatest to take phone calls on. In any case, as someone who's had most of these products, I'm really excited to try them out and see how they do with these new updates. Honestly, there was so much, I know I didn't get them all, so if there's any new features that you're excited about, let me know in the comments below. And if you have any questions about those new features, obviously I probably know as much as you do, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them in the comments below. And stay tuned for another video where we talk about the big elephant in the room, those Vision Pro AR goggles, whatever you want to call them. I'm very conflicted. Let's talk about that in the next video. In the meantime, watch any of these videos here, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.